Oh, no, no worries. Okay, we're moving right to the next section, which is a fireside chat with Andy Schmidt, who is a Vice President and Global Industry Lead for Banking at CGI. So we wanted to follow the morning power hour with this fireside chat so we can help banks better understand the practical side of real-time payments implementation. And I'd like to introduce CGI, who's been at the forefront of bringing real-time payments to market in the US, Canada, and elsewhere. And they can provide some really unique and real-world insights. So the title of our panel is Lessons Learned, Implementations and Lessons Learned. So Andy, can you first share with the audience a little bit about CGI and how you fit into the real-time payments ecosystem?
Sure, absolutely. So, and thank you for having me. It's great to be in front of you and see you all. So for those of you who don't know us, CGI is one of the largest business and technology consulting services in the world. We have over 88,000 people, 88,000 members around the world serving our various clients. And the firm itself started in 1976, but our roots through our acquisition go back even further than that. So they go back to the 60s when we were working on testing parts of Swift and building Swift interfaces for our clients.
So you started with payments in the very beginning.
Yes.
And you have some products. Can you tell us about your payment products? To just list them?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, right, of course. No. So CGI All Payments is our flagship product, and I mentioned some of our predecessors. Logica actually built the original idea for it. It was originally the Logica All Payment solution. And so since then, we've obviously completely rebuilt it, but it is an enterprise payment hub encompassing multiple payment types from batch to real time and beyond.
Okay, on our prep call, we talked about some of your experience with clients building and implementing real-time payments. What is the standard implement? What is good, and what has CGI been able to help certain clients with to make it even faster?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as with any implementation like this, the real answer is it depends. Do you have your business cases lined up? Do you have your technology partners lined up, and so on? And as we participate in the FedNow pilot, that those types of conversations continue to happen. But a couple of implementations that we worked on recently, we were able to get 2 banks stood up at the same time in a 4-month period, and we're particularly proud of that. And the way we were able to do that was really by taking more of a cloud-first, cloud-agnostic approach to the implementation, giving us and our client much more flexibility in terms of deployment type, deployment timelines, and so on.
And why does cloud make it faster?
Sure. Well, yeah, the cloud makes it faster because you can connect to an existing infrastructure and use that infrastructure to facilitate implementations to the various rails that you need to have. And so by having that cloud infrastructure, you're also able to do this work remotely. A number of these implementations that we have been working on have taken place during the lockdown period of COVID, and in the old on-prem world, that simply wouldn't be possible.
So yeah, back in the old days when everything was on-prem, how long would an implementation take?
Years.
Years.
It could take
oh my
years.
God. Yeah. So people sitting at home in their pajamas on Zoom calls could do it in 4 months.
Yeah. But that's also because the technology is so much more flexible, and so you're not having to rebuild certain things. You're not having to try and deduce what decision was made by the COBOL programmer way back when. You're able to work with modern, flexible infrastructures, API-enabled infrastructures that access and leverage data far more quickly, far more easily than they ever could before.
One of the best quotes I ever heard about real-time payments was some years ago in the UK when it was pretty new there, and was one of the first neobanks, sort of smaller bank that hooked into the system. And the lady that ran it said, real-time payments are like a newborn baby. It stays up all night spitting out data.
Exactly right.
So what are some of the gaps that you've seen or surprises post-implementation?
Well, yeah, I think one of the biggest maybe unanticipated consequences is that, as you point out, real-time payments happen 24 hours a day. The payments don't stop when you walk out the door. So, for the banks, for the corporates, being able to have a sense of, what do those volumes look like, what's coming in, what's going out, are data sets, insights that we need to figure out a way to leverage, and whether you leverage a working capital line of credit or you have other types of vehicles in place, being able to make sure that you're not overdrawn when you walk in first thing Monday morning is going to be important.
You would think so, yeah. You were telling me about this new, I don't know if it's a regulation, DORA?
DORA, yes,
Yeah.
not the cartoon character. Yes.
Okay. And what does it stand for?
It's I had to write it down because I always misquote it. It's the Digital Operational Resilience Act. And
It's in the EU.
It's in the EU, and it's in draft at the moment. But just as ISO 20022 started off in Europe and came here, we believe the DORA will do something similar. And it's meant to make sure that the infrastructures that you're interacting with actually can stand up to cyber attack, but also can stand up to other types of outages. And so one of the conversations that we're having with our clients is, do you use cloud to not only get you to real-time payments faster, but also to help you meet your requirements, your duties under DORA? Because and one of the things that we were talking about was the possibility of dual cloud deployment. So whenever you stand up a new payment rail or a new payment system, the DR, business continuity, is always going to be an important topic. And quick show of hands, who knows where their DR folder is? I'm impressed. Okay, who's used it recently? Okay, so few, but first of all, I'm thrilled to be in a room where people actually know where the folder is. There have been a number of times where I'll ask that question and people look at each other. It's like, I thought you had that, and so the reality is that payment systems go down, things break, and it could be an act of aggression, it could be a storm, it could be a squirrel chewing a cable. That has happened. Squirrels actually have
Squirrels?
Well, they have a pretty impressive track record against data centers, believe it or not. But by taking a dual cloud approach, you're able to, especially if it's a cloud agnostic dual cloud approach, a more containerized approach, you're able to simply point your selector from provider A to provider B. We had one client that went with the dual cloud approach. Believe it or not, provider A went down, and so they had to cut over, and I was expecting an hour or something like that. And when I talked to the team about it, they said, well, it's actually 12 minutes. 12 minutes from provider A to provider B. And a good part of that time was spent on the phone with the regulator, making sure that they knew that A, there was an outage, and B, we're on it. And so as we get to real-time interconnected systems, maintaining uptime is going to be vitally important. One of the challenges that we saw in the Great Recession was that you had these outages, people went dark. Sometimes it was technical, sometimes it was just there were other issues. But when you have these outages, and this lack of connectivity, you do introduce risk into the system. And so by having it be more flexible, having it be more resilient, you're able to really further capture the opportunity, the benefit that real-time can provide.
What are the top add-on capabilities and services that your clients are asking for?
Sure. Yeah, they're asking for it in really two different ways. There's something that we run every year called the Global Treasurer Survey, and so I'm going to be presenting that at the beginning of December, and that's where we talk to banks and to corporates about what they want, what they need, and how they think the other side is doing. And so and it was mentioned in the previous session. It's a topic that kind of floats around, becomes really important for a while, and then fades away, and that is liquidity management.
Okay.
Being able to know, being able to have some sort of insight into what your cash flows are going to be. Now, for customers where you have a long time relationship, just looking at your cash flow over past years is a pretty good indicator. But as you switch banks, as you add new partners, you're going to have variation that you need to be able to account for. Now, simple things like letting you know on that day what your liquidity looks like is one thing, but being able to wrap that need with integrated payables, integrated receivables to have a much better indication of what payments are in queue and when they might hit your account is going to be very, very helpful. But also, as always, traditional offerings like working capital lines of credit clearly have a role to play here.
Okay, so that's the banks offering this to their corporate customers?
Banks offering it to their corporate customers, and even the ERP systems being able to have some sort of signaling to say, look, this payment is going to be hitting your account on this day. Now, in a real-time world, if I initiate it now, obviously, I'll have moments, but payments that you have queued up to manage as a corporate, your own cash flow, being able to signal when those are going out will be helpful.
One of our clients at PayGility is actually a company that moves billions of dollars around, and the guy who was in charge of that, in some cases, still preferred a paper check because of the flow.
Because I can see it. No, it's during the recession, there was for a short period of time an increase in the number of checks that were being written. And the reason for that was that people wanted to know and see it. I can staple it to something. I can put it in an envelope. I put the payment in the mail. I know that the payment's been made.
It just seems so backwards, but
well, yeah, we still have a pretty ardent love affair with checks, although volume is declining.
Just barely.
Just
yes.
barely.
Yeah. Since CGI has a unique perspective, you worked in the U.S., Canada, and elsewhere.
Yeah.
What are some of the interesting things you've seen on the business side in other geographies?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the practical implications is that, and it was touched on briefly in the previous session, old payment rails never die, and so you simply see your volumes decline over time. And so, some of the things that we've seen specifically, in the UK, wire volume is declining because you have a real-time payment that is just as irrevocable and is easier to initiate in many cases, and far cheaper for the customer. So as limits increase, the volume in your other high value systems will certainly decrease over time. There may be specific transactions where you want to initiate a wire, a large acquisition, a home closing, something like that. But over time, we've been seeing in other geographies wire volumes decline. Others, you mentioned the unique cottage business that the Brazilian kidnappers have. We have been seeing debit card transactions transition over to the PIX network for very similar reasons. It's immediate, it's flexible, and it's available right now. And then another one, just in terms of India, the COVID and their move, their replacement of cash really has driven massive adoption of the UPI, and one of the reasons why I think we're moving more slowly is that we have so many other ways to make payments. You mentioned checks, we have card, we have ACH, we have Venmo, and so the reason for moving to real time is what I think is something that a lot of banks, a lot of corporates, are still struggling with a little bit.
Any questions from the audience? We have a few more minutes. Anything else you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, there was a talk about request for payment on the previous session. And when we were talking to the Fed about what are going to be some of the main drivers for driving FedNow adoption in R2P, is that business case. Who are the primary organizations that are sending the bills, and so especially as we are possibly moving into another recession, request to payment does fill an important gap and creates a very important gateway for not only collecting a payment quickly and irrevocably, but also continuing that conversation with the client to make sure that they still have access to the services that they need. And another one key part of that is we're going to be entering a potentially very cold winter in Europe right now. And our work with one of the UK gas utilities with our Ordo solution, a mobile-based request-to-pay solution, not only helped them stay in contact with their customers and make sure that the heat stayed on, it also greatly aided in reconciliation because you could send the request out with all the account information attached, and up until that time, they were very check heavy in terms of the payments that were coming in. And on the memo line, guess what the people would usually write for their gas bill on the memo line? Gas bill. So if it was a partial payment, it would be impossible to find. You'd have to try and backtrack it to the home address, possibly the name. But if I send you a request to pay or a request for payment to your mobile device, it's me. We both know what account it's for. You hit send, and then we're good. All the reconciliation is done. The payment is received as quickly and as cheaply as possible, and everything keeps moving.
Right. We were talking before about winners and losers. I heard a really interesting use case at a conference. It was instant pay. It's like Uber for freight. So instead
Sure.
of carrying people around, it's carrying freight around. And they said they were paying the drivers instantly as soon as the delivery of the freight was confirmed. And that's in contrast to they used to pay them net 30. And I asked, are the drivers getting a discount for getting paid instantly? Because normally that's the way it works. If you get
Right.
paid instantly, you
Right,
have to,
net 30, right.
Yeah. They said, no, we have to pay the drivers instantly because we can't find any drivers. So
yeah, there is going to be a significant driver shortage in the U.S. and that's very much the same use case for mobile remote deposit capture. Here's the check. Okay, I'm going to deposit it right now. And so, and like I said, old payment rails never die. Just the use cases get updated.
Right. Well, thank you very much. This has been very interesting. It's good to hear an implementation perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on.